Now the brain stem composed of these 18 slides is an outline of the nervous system to some extent, and also you see simplified illustrations are there, and it is easy to grasp. Now brain stem composed of midbrain, pons and medulla. What is the brain stem? Midbrain, pons and medulla. Midbrain around the cerebral aqueduct, groups of cell bodies. এই কোথায় রে এগুলো ধুয়ে টেবিলে দুটো দিয়ে আরে না না আমার চোখে দারুণ একে তো সমস্যা হচ্ছে কে আছে না ডাইসেকশন হলে দুটো টেবিল ছোট ছোট টেবিল রাখা আছে কালকে দিয়েছিলাম ওখানে আমি তাই ভাবছি দুটোই ওখানেই দিবি এখানে হবে না এখানে একটা টেবিলে কি করা হবে যেখানকার যা জিনিস সেখানে রান্নাঘরে বাথরুমে রান্না করা যাবে না বাথরুমে ঠাকুর ঘর করা যাবে আমি বাবু এটা বুঝি পড়ার জায়গায় পড়বে ওই ডাইনিং টেবিলে পড়তে লাগলে সেটা না একটা সই করলে আলাদা কথা আবার টিভি রুমে তোমার লো টেবিলে লাঞ্চ করতে করতে টিভি দেখবে ডিনার করবে এটা ঠিক পছন্দ না I think aging has some relation with allergy to formalin or not. Really, I used to spend hours and then dissecting specimens for the museums in Bardhaman. But that time I didn't feel. I should pick up the specimen from VAT. Anyway, it can happen, alter. Now, around the cerebral aqueduct, group of cell bodies and tracts connect the cerebrum to the lower parts and the spinal cord. Pons, situated in front of the cerebellum, nerve fibers that connect the two hemispheres of the cerebellum as well as the brain and spinal cord. Nuclei act as relay station. Very simplified drawing. You just practice. Pons, medulla and cerebellum, where is the fourth ventricle, where is the third ventricle. You just draw a sketch in a very most simplified way. And now see, this is the corpus callosum, third ventricle. This is the corpus callosum. The fourth ventricle is here. Pons is here. Medulla oblongata. This is part is known as medulla oblongata. Now, cerebellum. Now, brainstem. Medulla oblongata between the pons and the spinal cord. White matter outside, gray inside. Relay station for sensory nerves passing from the spinal cord to the cerebrum. Vital centers, cardiac, respiratory, vasomotor, reflex centers. Decussation of motor and sensory tracts. Now, when I taught you cervical vertebra, then the axis and the atlas, I told you that the odontoid process. Now, if anyone is throttled and killed or killed with some stick and after that hung in the pole or the your tree or something like that. But when during post-mortem, now they are trying to claim that no, this is the death by hanging. Hanging, it can be suicide, it can be homicide. Now the small odontoid process, it actually when you pull and kick the chair and you hang, immediately what happens? The odontoid process presses on the medulla oblongata, and the vital cardiac, respiratory, vasomotor, reflex centers are placed in the medulla, brainstem, the medulla oblongata. Am I clear? So, what is the very vital, important is your your vital centers are cardiac, respiratory, vasomotor, reflex centers. Now, reticular formation, a collection of neurons in the brain stem, coordination of muscle activity, and selective awareness. Now, now what is reticular formation? It can be a short note. Now, again, you see the picture, corpus callosum, third ventricle. This is the cerebellum. The other day I lectured on cerebellum. The fourth ventricle is here, pons is here, medulla oblongata is here. Now, cerebellum situated behind the pons and the medulla. I recall now between the pons and medulla, this is in between, this is the cerebellum. Now, situated behind the pons and the medulla, two hemispheres united by varves, functions, coordination of voluntary muscular movement, posture, balance. If you write this like this, you just mention, you will get marks. You will get marks, okay? Now, spinal cord, elongated cylindrical part of the CNS, suspended in the vertebral canal surrounded by meninges and CSF, continues above as the medulla, extends from the upper border of the C1 vertebra and up to the lower border of the L1 vertebra. Now, the spinal cord, the elongated cylindrical part of the CNS, suspended in the vertebral canal and surrounded by meninges and CSF, continues above as the medulla, extends from the upper border of the C1 vertebra up to the lower border of L1 vertebra. Now, this is a picture, simplified picture. Now, this is the cerebrum, midbrain, pons, medulla oblongata. This is the cerebellum. Chuler khopa, loose khopa. It is the cerebellum. Okay. Now, spinal cord. The importance of spinal cord is lumbar puncture, a procedure to get a sample of CSF for testing, be done at the level of L2, L3, L4. And at this level is also for spinal anesthesia. They put the needle and the anesthetic drug. Rootlets emerge that combine to form the roots, and those combine to form one spinal nerve on one side. Now, this is another good picture, the dura mater, simplified. The spinal nerve, the arachnoid matter, this is the pia mater, this is the spinal cord. Dura mater, arachnoid matter, dura mater, pia mater, spinal cord. Now, this is lumbar 1 at this level, end of the spinal cord, L2. Now, from here, phylum terminal extends, this is the spinal nerves, dura mater is knee in blue, and lower end of the dura mater is here, and phylum terminal coccyx, L5, S1. Now, this is a picture of the spinal cord and the spinal nerves. Now, cervical nerves, thoracic nerves, lumbar nerves, sacral and coccygeal nerves. This is the phylum terminal. Now, spinal cord, internal structures, anterior median fissure, posterior median septum, central canal in the center, gray matter in the middle, white matter in the periphery. Now, we have two histological slides. Two histological slides in our lab. You have seen it earlier. If you want to revise, you can see it. And the whole section, the cross section, you will see the arrangement. What I am saying over here. Now, see, the anterior median fissure, the posterior median septum, and central canal in the center, gray matter in the middle, white matter in the periphery. You see it in 10x magnification, 10x. The spinal cord in the histology lab, you see it in 10x, and you can see the whole spinal cord. So it is a revision. Now this is the posterior median septum, posterior white column, posterior gray column, lateral white column, anterior gray column, anterior white column, and posterior sensory root is going in, spinal ganglion, and anterior motor root going out, spinal nerve, anterior column. This. Now, spinal cord, internal structures, gray matter, 2 anterior horns, 2 posterior horns, 2 lateral horns in thoracic, upper lumbar and sacral segment. Cell bodies of the neurons are located in sensory cells, lower motor neuron, connector neurons. Anterior gray horn transmits motor impulses sent from the cortex. Posterior receives the posterior receives and transmits sensory impulses to the cortex. Anterior horn, it transmits motor impulses from the cortex, and posterior receives and transmits sensory impulses to the cortex. Yeah, it's a nice picture. You can see the cerebral cortex, the sulci and gyri. This is the thalamus. This is the basal nuclei. Sensory decussation, crossover, and posterior white column. Yeah. Now cell bodies in medulla oblongata, and sensory receptor in skin, posterior root ganglion, it goes this way. Crossover and then goes through the thalamus to the cerebral cortex. Now peripheral spinal nerve, it goes like this, this crossover, decussate here and go to the thalamus and go to this cord. Now anterior aspect of the posterior root ganglion. This is sensory receptor in the skin. Now see a simple reflex arc involving one side only. Now these are very important in your histology and also anatomy. The skin with the sensory nerve endings, sensory nerves, posterior root ganglion, and connector neurons, spinal cord, mixed nerve here, and the motor nerve fibers, motor end plates in skeletal muscles. Anterior aspect, you can see the connector neuron and the spinal cord. Spinal cord internal structures, white matter arranged in columns, tracts, ascending and sensory tracts, lateral and anterior spinothalamic tract, anterior and posterior spinocerebellar tract, descending or motor tracts, anterior and lateral corticospinal tract. You have to know the tracts in physiology and also the anatomy, and any lesion that is occurring. You please go to the hall, see the brain, and see একবার ভালো করে দেখে নাও, এরপরে আবার তুমি মানে দুটো মানে একটার প্রিপারেশন নেবে এমনভাবে যে the whole syllabus will be coming in your tests or semester, whatever you call it. Don't panic. Again, I'm telling you, don't panic. You sit down. At least, I told you, you must be prepared to do your practicals very well. Identify. একটা ব্রেনকে লিভার বলবে না, একটা স্টারনামকে সেক্রাম বলবে না। হয়, এগুলো হয়। তোমার আগের দাদা দিদিরা সেক্রামকে বলে দিচ্ছে স্টারনাম আর স্টারনামকে বলে দিচ্ছে সেক্রাম। হ্যাঁ, হেসোটা ওই বাবু অ্যানাটমি এমনই, তোমাকে না, এটা মজার কথা নয়। আমি নিজে প্রত্যক্ষ করেছি এক্সামিনেশন নিতে গিয়ে। I had an experience. Not everyone is saying.